Howdy friends, Craig here. In this episode, we drop into Wyrd Games' backyard and talk with players and henchmen from the US-Georgia meta about the Growth League and tournament that they ran to help kick off the 3rd edition of Malifaux. Anyone thinking of running a Growth League or looking for a great way to bring back old players or even attract new ones should enjoy this. Before we jump in, our friends at Gadzooks Gaming have a sweet offer for all of our US and Canadian listeners. Now, Gadzooks Gaming has always been a big supporter of the Third Floor, as well as Malifaux and a ton of other games like Wild West Exodus, Dark Age, Frostgrave, and Legion. What makes it my favorite online retailer is the customer service and their amazing custom terrain and accessories. They are giving all of our North American listeners free shipping if you spend over $100 and use the promo code THIRDFLOOR, spelled out one word, THIRD. Check them out at gadzooksgaming.com. All the details are in the show notes. The promo code is Third Floor. Now on to the episode. I'm really curious as we get into the birth of 3rd edition, kind of what the spread was on factions.
It enabled us to get a lot more games than we were getting.
That's good.
Because before it was begging for people to come play, and the Growth League it got them excited.
Cut to the chase. Who was on the podium and who won? Brian, if you don't mind, can you kind of walk us through kind of the structure of your Growth League?
Yeah, one thing I've seen is if you learn how to play your master well, every single master feels broken. It's not as straightforward as it felt in M2E, where this master does this, all you have to do is do this. It's more about the crews.
There are few things better than stepping away from the screens, unplugging and sitting around a table to do battle with your friends. Every week, Third Floor Wars brings you the latest strategies, tactics, and reviews on board games, card games, and miniature games like Malifaux. If you want useful information on the games you already play, or new insights on great games other people are playing, you are in the right place. Craig and Ray welcome you to the Third Floor and the Tabletop Talk broadcast.
Craig here on the Third Floor. Today we're going to check in with the US-Georgia meta. Now this meta is in the Wyrd's backyard, and recently many of the players did a Growth League, which finished with a full tournament. This can be a great way to introduce new players to Malifaux, get current players to explore new factions and masters, and up the game's visibility at the local game store. Now, this meta is lucky to have 2 henchmen supporting the game in the area. Brian Schoner and Matt Riddle are both here, along with one of the active players in the area, Josh Dean. Now, I've known Brian for several years. He's actually a good friend of mine. Jimmy painted an amazing Addams Family-themed McMorning crew for him. He also came to our local shop last year, and we played each other. And this might surprise you, but I lost. Brian, welcome to the Third Floor. Can you give the listeners a bit of a background on how you found Malifaux?
Absolutely. And I'll say anybody who's played against me will also be shocked that you lost, because as much as I love this game, I'm terrible at it.
Well, and that lets everybody who's beaten you realize just how bad I am, Brian.
So I had been a board gamer and RPG gamer for a long time. Started fiddling with 40K when I started getting interested in the miniature side of things. And I discovered I liked everything about Warhammer 40K except actually playing the game. So I started looking for something smaller. I kept seeing Malifaux boxes in players in my local gaming store. The miniatures looked really fascinating. Our henchman at the time, Joshua Lee Center, gave me a demo probably early 2015, relatively early in 2nd edition. And I was hooked largely because it used cards and not dice, because dice hate me. And then ever since then, I have been playing the game not very well, but enjoying the heck out of it. Became a henchman not long after that, and been rolling ever since.
Yeah, and you also have one of my favorite podcasts, Brian. Can we talk about your podcast just real quick?
Well, if you insist. I co-host a podcast called The Ascent of Board Games, which, as the name implies, has nothing to do with Malifaux, but everything to do with board games. And we can put a link up in the show notes. And if you guys are interested in board games that aren't Malifaux, please give us a listen. We'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, and what I like about your podcast, Brian, is it's a very unique take. So you guys, you put a lot of different types of aspects of board games, mechanics, types of board games, and you really put them in a great context. And all of you guys on that podcast, you really know your stuff when it comes to board games. So it's one of, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it's when that one pops up on my feed, it always gets one of the first listens, man. So we'll have it in the show notes to make sure everybody else can start listening too.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a good show, man. It really is. Now, our next guest is Matt Riddle. He's the other henchman in the meta, and it turns out he's never beat me. Now, of course, he's never played me, so he was the TO for the event-ending tournament. So, Matt, welcome to the third floor. And how did you end up becoming a Malifaux player?
Well, thanks for having me, Craig. So I, much like Brian, I've been into board games and tabletop gaming for a long time. Like most do, I started off with 40K and Warhammer Fantasy, and I got into Malifaux back in first edition when I was still living up in Alaska. I actually worked part-time at a hobby shop to kind of pay for my plastic addiction, and while I was up there, we just happened to order in some Malifaux minis, and I thought they looked, they were very different compared to most everything else that was out there. Really liked the look of them, so picked up a couple of boxes, and I owned the minis. I liked having them, but I didn't really play so much in first edition. Didn't really give it a lot of attention. That was until second edition came around, and then I saw the plastic models that had come out, and I was hooked after that. I was, at that point in time, I was pretty disenchanted with GW. I was actually looking for a new game, more smaller scale, and I think the first crew box I picked up was actually Marcus, and just fell in love with the minis, and that's history. The rest is history, as far as they say. I became a henchman pretty soon afterwards because working at the shop, I was able to kind of push the game and show the miniatures to the local players of their miniatures games, and was able to hook a lot of people on. But obviously, we didn't have anybody to run official events and that sort of deal. So I took it upon myself to become a henchman up there and kind of built a meta up there from scratch. And, then a couple of years ago when I moved down here to Georgia, happened to meet up with Brian and Josh, who was the other henchman at the time. And very quickly they brought me into the ranks and kind of picked up where I left off, doing henchmaning down here. So
that's very cool. Yeah. Malifaux can get its hooks into you, man. Especially if you're somebody who's played a lot of different miniature games. It feels like the greatest hits with a couple new elements. So that's very cool. All right. Last but not least, we've got Josh, and some of you might know Josh Dean from the AWP Facebook group, as well as the forums. So welcome to the third floor, Josh. And how did you find Malifaux?
Yeah. So like the other two, I started with 40K. That's pretty much like the go-to start. We got kind of disinterested by 40K as a game and moved into Age of Sigmar. And that's pretty much been our primary game forever. But we started looking for like a smaller skirmish size game. And my primary play partner, Brent, he introduced me to Malifaux. And the way he introduced it was, you can play the things of nightmares and send those against your enemies and let them eat their dreams. And I'm like, oh, I'm sold. I'm sold. So my first crew was Dreamer.
Nice.
And this was M2E. This was last January. So we've only been playing for a year and a half. And since then, I've moved into 10 Thunders with M3E and been loving it since. Like, we got in on closed beta and been pretty active since then. We've played 2 or 3 games a week.
Wow.
Since we got into the closed beta.
That's impressive, my friend. Yeah, the one thing I have to say, I mean, granted, you haven't been playing very long, but the rumor is you're pretty good at the game. One thing that's nice, I think, is, if you come into it having played other games, a lot of the skill sets that you've picked up in 40K and stuff, they translate. And I think the increased player agency you have in the game allows people that were, good but frustrated with other games to be good and also perform well in this game.
Yeah, getting acclimated to the skirmish aspect of it and understanding activation control, small things like that was a little bit of a change, but a lot of the skills translate.
Oh, very cool. So, gentlemen, the reason I reached out to you guys to see if you would come on the show is, we're part of the same Southeastern group, and I saw Brian was putting together a growth league, and then you guys were going to have a tournament afterwards. And when it was all wrapped up, I pressured Brian to help me get you guys together so we could talk about it, because I think that format of having a growth league followed by a tournament is something that a lot of the metas out there should consider doing, because I've been through it before and I've seen other metas do it, and it really captures a few things. One, it allows you to kind of reinvigorate current players. Because it encourages them to try something new. That's not the same type of pressure that they usually have, and in a five event USFT type stuff. But it also, I think, attracts new players. So, Brian, if you don't mind, can you kind of walk us through kind of the structure of your growth league?
Sure. Just to set a little context for it, the Atlanta area meta is a little bit odd because Atlanta is a very spread out city. I like to say that everything in Atlanta is at least 45 minutes from everything else. And so we've got kind of two main centers of Malifaux play, both on the north side of town, one on the northwest, one on the northeast. And those metas don't get to mix very often just because of the distance between them. Matt and I both happen to be on the northwest side of town, so that's where most of our attention is. And then the guys on the northeast side of town, or the guys who at least play over there, are making us look bad because they're getting a lot more games in than we are, which showed in the results of the tournament, but we'll talk about that later. But basically, we wanted to keep the rules to this one as simple as possible. We wanted to get as many people as possible into the tournament or the Grow League, because, as you say, we wanted to help bring some new players in, get some existing players and first edition players sort of reinvigorated with the new release. So basically, we started with 30 Soulstone crews and increased it by 5 stones a week until we got to 50. Basically, we didn't do anything as far as specifying schemes or strats or anything like that. We basically let the players handle it themselves. And then for every game that was reported during the Grow League, each player got a raffle entry. So at the final tournament, we did a drawing. We had a Mats by Mars mat, some Fate decks, some mystery boxes, some alt models. Basically just trying to get some folks interested and psyched up for the upcoming release. We didn't have a lot of new players come in during the league. In fact, I don't know that anybody joined specifically for the league. But I know that at least where Matt and I were, there were a number of folks who saw it and were curious and asked questions and wound up getting demos later. So we're definitely drawing some new people into it. We're hoping to really push things later this month when the actual 3rd edition release comes out. We've got some big stuff planned then.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hidden benefits, Brian, of a growth league is you're pushing people to the stores. Malifaux turns heads between the quality of the models and the uniqueness of the setting, and then of course the cards. So that's cool that you ended up reeling some people in, not for the growth league, but because of the growth league. That's cool.
On the northeast side, we didn't get any new players, but a lot of people who had stopped playing throughout beta and whatnot picked it back up.
It's a low pressure way to kind of come back into 3.
Yeah. And it enabled us to get a lot more games than we were getting.
That's good.
Because before it was begging for people to come play, and the Growth League it got them excited.
That's cool. So, Brian, how many total people between the two mini metas, like how many people participated in the Growth League?
The number of folks I had entries for was 8, so it wasn't a real huge group. But like I say, we've got some folks who were definitely interested, and I suspect there were more games that didn't get reported. because I know at least a couple of our Northwest side folks were playing, but I don't have them on my formal list. I was less concerned about getting the reports and more concerned about just getting everybody in. It's a little, I don't want to say disappointing, but it's always been a little odd to me that the store where we play on the northwest side of town is literally about 2 miles from Wyrd HQ. And while we get some good support from the company, Matt Carter, who you've had on the show before, often comes by and, plays the ringer, hangs out, does games, does demos, talks to folks. It's just never been, we have kind of a core group, but it's been a little bit tricky getting more people involved. So I'm really hoping third edition gives us a good reason and a good excuse to punch that up.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember the name of the shop where you guys play.
Gigabytes Cafe is our usual hangout.
Great store. Great
really
store.
is.
Yeah, I used to come to Atlanta for work a lot and always made a point to come up to Gigabytes because I just thought it was a really, really neat place. And yeah, there's, no excuse for that not to be the strongest meta with Wyrd right there. But I guess that's probably just one of those weird things because it's kind of always been the case from my understanding.
Yeah, even when I was there, the meta seemed to be about the same size. It's like we would have sometimes 3 or 4 games going on a Thursday night, which is our usual night. But if we did a tournament on a Saturday, it was just seemed to be hard to get a bunch of people in the same place. Thankfully, that was a little bit better with this past tournament, and I'm hoping we'll keep the momentum going with third edition.
Now, you mentioned in the structure, Brian, that you started off with 30 stones, and then each week you guys, increased it. So it was 35, 40, 45, 50. Did you have any restrictions? Like, did someone have to play the same master at all those different stages? Or if let's say they added a model at 35 stones, did that model have to stay in their crew until they hit 50?
No, we really kept it pretty free form. We didn't want to do it sort of campaign style because especially at this point with folks that maybe hadn't played in the closed beta, there's a lot of, I need to try stuff out and see what's going on, see what I like. So we wanted to let people be as open as possible to trying different combinations of things and seeing what worked for them.
I think that's real smart.
So it was pretty much just as long as you stay in your faction and you have that many stones, you're good to go.
That's a very smart move. I was hoping that was going to be the answer. It's very tempting, I think, for those of you out there that are considering this to make things, kind of more structured and cooler for a growth league. But it's been my experience that the more layers you add to this type of thing, the more complicated it ends up becoming. And it discourages players from participating, even if they say they might play the first week and then not play the second week. And it just overcomplicates it because, and Brian, I think you said it, or Matt, you said it, the goal is to get people to put their models on a table and to play the game. And the least amount of barriers you can put between you and that goal, I think is very smart.
Yeah, exactly. Once everybody's more familiar with third edition and we've got a lot more games under our belt, maybe we start getting a little more fancy and more constrained with it. But for right now, it's just getting games on the table.
That's great. So what's the name of the other store that is in the Northeast?
Meeple Madness is the store up there.
Gotcha.
Also a very nice store, I should say.
Yeah, I've never been there. I follow them on Facebook, and it looks like a gorgeous store, but I've never been there.
It's a nice layout. It really is. It's a table space.
And are they pretty good as far as supporting miniature games in general?
They are. They're primarily a board game store, but they are willing to carry most miniatures. They don't currently carry any Wyrd on the shelves, but they'll special order everything we've ever asked them to.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, this is another thing for people to think about too. It's frustrating when you walk into a store and you don't see Wyrd stuff on there. And there's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing that happens there because carrying inventory as a store is very expensive. And there was a local store here that really didn't carry Malifaux. And I thought they did something very clever because we all made a concerted effort to special order through them. it is, because it's been my experience that that's how a store will begin to go, well, boy, a lot of people are ordering Malifaux. And what this store owner did, which I thought was clever, is, I'd go in there and I'd special order a crew box and this model and that model. And whatever was special ordered, he got 2 of. And he'd put the second one on the shelf. And I asked him about it, and he said, well, I know that at least one person likes this, and it saves me from trying to figure out, what's popular, what's not popular. And it ended up, I ended up having a full shelf of Malifaux. And then he went beyond just ordering it that way. So for those of you out there that have a local store that's not stocking Malifaux, highly recommend, as tempting as the prices on the internet can be, I highly recommend pushing your players to special order through the store. And you might be amazed. They might end up having a section of Malifaux there on the shelves.
Yeah, it's been kind of a difficult period ever since the sort of unplanned announcement of 3rd edition. Gigabytes 2 is actually currently not having 2nd edition Malifaux stuff on their shelves, just because they haven't been able to sell any during this lull period.
Yep.
But they're going to be picking up 3rd edition when it comes out. They're going to have the starter boxes on there, and like I say, we're really pushing to get it back, because it's just like you said, that it's hard for a store to carry all that inventory if it's not moving, and especially, Wyrd has acknowledged this too. There was a lot of SKUs, a lot of different stock units in 2nd edition, and I think 3rd edition is going to clean a lot of that up and make it easier for stores to carry.
I agree. So, Josh, was it tough, having kind of a growth league running in 2 different stores?
It actually wasn't. We were able to report all of our games right through. We created a Facebook group or an event specifically for the league, and we were able to report all our games through there. So as soon as we play one, we get on there, give some details, mission, deployment, strats and schemes, pool, whatnot. And yeah, it was super easy. We were able to report all of our games every week without ever driving an hour and a half down to Gigabytes.
Yeah, and I would imagine, again, the way that we've been talking about it allowed you guys to, to have that almost cross mini meta participation and feel like, everybody was involved. So I think that's very cool. And I would assume that the tournament at the end was a chance for kind of battle of the stores.
Yeah, it definitely turned out where the Meeple folk came down and really represented their little mini meta. What's up?
They whooped us, I think is the technical term.
Yes, they did. We've got some catching up to do. But it was good to have them there representing that growing meta at the other store. And again, seeing what we're up against and knowing now that we have to pick up our game a little bit.
So here's another thing, guys, because we have three stores here in the Triangle, in the Raleigh-Durham area that we play Malifaux on. So we have 3 different nights to choose from, and one thing that we have in place, which I think is really cool, and we've extended it out to also the Charlotte meta, the Eastern Carolina meta, and South Carolina, is we have what we call the store trophy. So every time there's a tournament, basically, every player declares a store. I play out of this store, and every player, has kind of their home store of all the stores in North Carolina. And at the end of the tournament, we give whatever store placed the best as a total group gets the trophy and gets to keep the trophy at that store until the next North Carolina tournament. And it sounds to me like that just Meeple would have the tournament trophy at all times, but it's still a cool idea for you guys.
At the rate we're going, yeah, it might be good, especially if we can get another store added into the mix. I'd love to get something like that going.
Yeah, it sounds really dumb, but trust me, at the end of a North Carolina tournament, everybody goes, "Who got the trophy?"
People love their trophies.
No, I believe it. I believe it.
They sure do. So, again, to reiterate what we've talked about, this Growth League format, for those of you that are really trying to get the ball rolling, even only if it ends up being 3 or 4 of you to start with, is something to look into. And I think, considering Brian's very simple but effective format is the way to go. What we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back from the break, I'm going to want to talk about the tournament that Matt ran at the end of this Growth League. So we'll be right back. Howdy friends, Craig here. With 3rd edition Malifaux released, it's time for you to get a new mat with new deployment zones. We've tried every mat in the business and nobody has better quality and selection than Mats by Mars. They're waterproof and they roll and unroll easily, and they're even wet erase Marco compatible. They offer over 35 designs and let you add M3EO overlays for making deployment and positioning a breeze. Check them out at matsbymars.com. They are offering a sweet discount for our listeners. After you found the perfect mat, use the promo code THIRDFLOOR to get 10% off your entire order. If you really want to support us, in the notes of your order, request that our logo be put in the corner of your mat. It's the only way to make the best mat in the business even cooler. Again, that's Mat by Mars. Use the promo code THIRDFLOOR to get a 10% discount. Details are in the show notes. So we talked about, how neat a growth league can be. And, I love growth leagues. But what I really love is growth leagues that finish with a tournament, because it puts a nice end cap on kind of that multi-week event. And Matt, from my understanding, you actually ran the league ending tournament. Which store was it held in?
We actually held it at Gigabytes, just because that's where Brian and I are more often, and it's closer by, so it just was really convenient. And so we set it up there. And as I mentioned earlier, we still got participation from the folks from Meeple. So, that was really nice to have them participate as well, to cap off that league.
So speaking of which, how many players were in the tournament?
Well, we actually only had 8 players and 1 dedicated ringer. In fact, Matt Carter, who we've had on the show before, he was our dedicated ringer. Also just kind of observing and seeing how things were going on as well. So I don't know if the 8 players we had the tournament matchup with Ryan who participated in the league, but again, it's good numbers considering sort of the lull that we've been in recently. So I was happy with 8, especially pre-official release.
Yeah, so. 8 players are 8 players, and considering the weird time that we've been in, I wouldn't be discouraged by that at all.
Absolutely.
So, Matt, can you kind of give us an idea? Was it 3 rounds? How was it structured?
Yeah, it was nothing too crazy. It was a standard 3-round fixed faction tournament. Just kind of like with the Grow League, I didn't want to put a bunch of restrictions on things. So there was nothing in regards to, people could bring Dead Man's Hand if they wanted to. No fixed masters. No limitations on dual masters. I know that's been thrown around in some circles, but we wanted to leave it as open as possible. So again, people coming off the Grow League could jump right in. We've entitled the tournament, what have you learned? An idea to culminate. Yeah, to culminate just what everyone had been learning up until that point, getting the hang of 3rd edition, and just bringing it to the table and seeing how things work out for them. So that was kind of the idea.
And can you give us an idea? So of the 8 players, how many people played Guild? How many? I'm really curious as we get into the birth of 3rd edition, kind of what the spread was on factions.
Well, I hate to disappoint you, but we didn't actually have any Guild. In fact, that's one of the weird things about the Atlanta meta is that we've never really had a strong showing of Guild. It's kind of bizarre. They're a good faction that they do well, obviously, but just nobody's really picked up on it. More around here, what people tend to gravitate to is we had a large turnout of 10 Thunders, which is pretty standard around here. So that was our biggest showing, but we also had Arcanists. We had Rezzers, we had Outcasts, no Gremlins to speak of at this show. Most everyone was represented, I think, at least to a small degree.
Yeah, we even had some Neverborn, which is like Guild, a faction that has been historically underrepresented in Atlanta.
It'll be interesting as, when the game launches, as you guys, start bringing, because I think that's when we're going to see the surge of new players, when kind of the word gets out that when I say new players, I'm including returning players, of course, but a lot of times you'll have those players that come in and go, well, what's a master or a faction nobody else is playing? So you might even that out, but it's amazing. Like almost every meta I talk to, there always seems to be 1 or 2 factions that are just historically underrepresented. In ours here in North Carolina, it's always been Bayou. We just, and I don't know, it's because Alex Schmidt scared everybody off of Bayou, but it was pretty much Alex, and then John Fox would play with it for a little while and goof off with it, and so would his son. But just generally speaking, it was always an underrepresented faction. So Matt, let's cut to the chase. Who was on the podium and who won?
One of our players, actually, Brian mentioned a Neverborn player. That's who took this thing. Yeah, exactly. So a gentleman named Brian, another Brian. I think he primarily played Pandora, if I remember correctly.
He played Nekima for his first 2 rounds, and then the final he took Pandora with a second master.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a Pandora Dreamer combination, if I'm remembering correctly.
I've heard there's good synergy there.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, both of them want you to fail those willpower duels. So,
yep. And second place?
Second place was Josh. So
nice.
Yeah, with his 10 Thunders. I mean, I'm not sure, who were you playing in the last round, Josh?
So I played Yanlo twice, and I did Asami for the second round.
Very cool. Yanlo is being built for Rezzers for me right now. He's going to be my next big crew. So I might have to pick your brain a little bit, Josh. And third place?
And our third place was our player Brandon. He was running Arcanist. I think he played Mei Fang for most of the day. I could be wrong on that. I'm walking around, basically just trying to keep an eye on things and answer questions. So sometimes I don't pay attention. But I think it was primarily Mei Fang. He might have thrown Sandeep on the table. I'm not 100% sure about that, but
I know he's a big fan of Sandeep, so I'm sure he put him on at least once.
Yeah, I was had a conversation with a couple guys over in the UK, and they're telling me that he's not as bonkers as he was in 2, pre-nerf Sandeep. But more than one Arcanist has told me that Sandeep is still the strongest master in their opinion in Arcanists. It's just not he's not so much stronger that you're only going to see Arcanists play Sandeep.
I agree. I mean, the his new summoning mechanic and combining up the Gammon into Golems, it seems really solid. Actually, from your podcast the other day, I think Karis is going to be really good moving forward with Arcanists. So, we'll see, I suppose.
Yeah, James Doxey's a huge fan of her, and like I said, after you listen to hear him talk about it, she sounds unbeatable.
Right.
To be fair, though, it's hard to beat James, whatever he plays. So, all right. So, and Josh, if you don't mind, I'm going to I want you to walk us through your 3 rounds, if you don't mind. So I guess if we can start off, Matt, you have the pools there. Can you tell us what the pool was for round 1?
Yeah. So our first round, the strategy was plant explosives, and our schemes were breakthrough, take prisoner, power ritual, assassinate, and search the ruins. So, Josh, what master did you bring into that?
So I brought in Yanlo. I've been playing with him a lot, and I've become a big fan of him. More so, like his henchmen and enforcers are just really good at plant explosives. I play him real tanky, so I take Monos and I take Azamu. So I have a real heavy armor crew.
Mm-hmm.
And who is it? The Kamainu. I just started playing with them with their armor 2, and then throwing Monos' Regin on them. Those guys are unkillable. Move 7 once they have the upgrade on them.
I've heard he's really good, and we have, one of our 10 Thunder videos, of course, was on Yanlo, and Ray Flynn is a huge fan of him. And I think it was a week or 2 ago we released. Steve Bynum put out a deep dive on Yanlo, and he sounds great, and it's that's why he's next in my queue. Are you having as much fun with him as he seems to be? I mean, he just seems to me like a fun master to run.
Oh yeah. It's one of those things. Like once my opponents figure out they need to kill him turn 1 or 2, then it becomes this epic game of, oh my god, can I keep him away just long enough to keep him, get him Super Saiyan.
Because he powers up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he gets crazy about round 3.
Yeah. So what? So who did you play against, and what crew did they bring?
So I played against Brian, who ended up taking the tournament, and he took Nekima into it. And I've got a little bit of familiarity. I played Neverborn throughout closed beta, and I forgot how killy she was. Even against my heavy armor tanky crew, man, flipped Red Joker on one of the damage slips from Nakima. I thought I was going to cry. Took out his armor in like 2 swings. But no, it was a really tight game. We both ended up taking Breakthrough and Search the Ruins because both our crews can get across the board pretty quick between Soul Porter's pushes and just Nakima's insane fly with me. So we ended up playing this crazy game where we hit each other in the middle and then ran away from each other to each other's deployment zone.
Any big learnings coming out of the game? Would you approach a game against Nakama differently than now that you've have that game under your belt?
No, I think it was a pretty good crew. I ended up taking 2 of the Ashigaru, and I'm a big fan of them. But I think in that mission, I needed more of those Kamainu with their move 7 running across the board.
Gotcha.
But overall, no, the crew was solid. I think it was a good pick.
Good. And Brian, what did you bring round 1?
I have not gotten Yanlo on the table yet. He sounds like a good fit for this, but I'm not used to his combination of upgrades and enhancements yet. So I brought in Jacob Lynch, who was my old reliable in 2nd edition, and I still like him in 3rd. I was up against a Parker crew, and I got badly beaten in this one. I had one key corner where I had reached some guys out on. I was trying to do power ritual and just got really bogged down by a couple of units I couldn't get past. I still really like the way Lynch plays. I mean, I miss having my super aces power, but having a lot of fun things to do with brilliance is great. I really have grown to hate run and gun. But one of the recurring things we talked about at this tournament is that, your crew is broken, but every crew is broken because that's how Malifaux works. You just have to find a way to adapt to the particular brokenness your opponent brings.
And we're going to hear a lot of that, I think, as more people start playing, because you couldn't be more right, Brian. And you felt that a little bit in 2, but here's what's going to happen in 3. 1, I think that the power level is higher for everybody. So I think and it's because of the keywords, it's because of the synergies that you get and the way models combine with each other now. And it's going to be lack of familiarity, because if you've played against Lynch or you've played against Yan Lo in 2, you haven't played them in 3, they're different. They feel the same. They are deceptively the same, but they're different. And I like that phrase of, boy, your crew is broken. It's just a question of how badly broken mine is as well, because it does feel that way.
Yeah, but it's just a lot of fun learning this. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of I don't want to say negative play experience, but there's going to be a lot of games as people get into 3rd edition. Whenever you first deal with a new crew, it's like, I have no idea how to cope with this thing, which is why I'm trying to get as many games as possible in just to learn more stuff.
Yeah, we're hearing chatter right now about, Lynch is broken. He dominated Tournament A, Tournament B. And I think people forget that, this is all brand new. Mm-hmm. And it takes time. And you start to figure it out, and the meta adjusts, and it's part of what's great about Malifaux. And the fact that you declare masters before you build crews, I don't think we're used to it yet. So I don't think we're taking full advantage of it yet. So I caution everybody, the way Brian is hinting at, to be careful, jumping on top of the milk crate and calling anybody broken or overpowered, or how did this make it out of beta, until the meta matures a little bit.
Yeah, one thing I've seen is if you learn how to play your master well, every single master feels broken.
Agreed. Until your opponent figures out the shtick.
Well, yeah, nothing is worse than playing a good player with a solid crew. All you used to hear is, and this is back in 2E, is that gremlins aren't very good. And I used to tell people, just play one game with Alex Schmidt and his gremlin crew. And after he just takes total advantage of you, then you realize that, and this is part of what I love about Malifaux, it's not the crew. It's the player that has the biggest influence on who wins and loses. And it feels like, and it's way early to say this is a fact yet, but it feels like that 3 might even be more balanced than 2, which makes my statement, I think, even more true. I hope I'm right on that.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way so far. From my perspective, I have a problem. When I first got into second edition Malifaux and I decided I was going to play 10 Thunders, I went out and bought every model they had because I wanted to be able to put anything on the board. And as a result, I was ping-ponging here and there and didn't really learn any of them well. Towards the end, I sort of focused on a couple masters and was getting better. And right now, where I am in third edition is still trying to sort of feel out all the different crews and seeing which ones I like the most. But I definitely want to try and focus on 1 or 2 because knowing your crew well is so crucial.
We just you couldn't be more right, Brian. We just recently picked up about 5 or 6 new players here in the last month or 2, and that is the resounding advice that we're giving these guys: is pick a crew, and not just pick a master. Like, pick 8 models, and regardless of the pool, regardless of the opponent, play those 8 models. And the one advice I gave to a guy the other day was, when you get to the point where you don't have to look at the cards anymore, where it's stat 7, what the crow trigger does, then you're ready to start exploring, because you're learning the game and you're learning the crew at the same time. And as intricate and deep as Malifaux is, if you're ping-ponging, I don't think that's a recipe for not only success, but to enjoy the game.
I can vouch that it's not a recipe for success. I still enjoy the game, though.
That's funny. And I think what kind of breeds that, because I did the same thing, Brian. When I started, I bought Guild, and within minutes ended up owning every model in Guild, because the format makes it feels like that's what you should do, right? You get the pool first, and then which master is going to be the best for the pool, and I think fix the list for a little while till you kind of learn the intricacies and subtleties of the crew, I think is very smart. Howdy folks, Craig here. Now if you love gadgets as much as we do, you're going to love the new Third Floor Wars Gadget Bundle from Schooner Labs. Branded with the logo of your favorite podcast, it comes with 2 measuring multi-tools, a compass stepper for those tight and important movements, along with a compact dashboard to track your turn, strat, and scheme scoring, along with your soul stones and pass tokens. It is the perfect bundle for anyone who plays Malifaux or just wants to look cool while doing it. The link is in the show notes. Check them out and help support your favorite gaming podcast. All right, so let's talk about round 2. Josh, who'd you face in round 2?
Round 2, I actually faced the same Parker Barrows crew that Brian faced round 1. I ended up taking Asami into him because I know Asami. Oh, do we want to talk about the pool?
Yeah, let's talk about the pool. Thanks.
Yeah, to give you the pool real quick. Yeah, so the second round we had Corrupted Idols, always a fun one, and then for schemes we had Dig Their Graves, Detonate Charges, Outflank, Vendetta, and Deliver a Message.
So your opponent in round 2?
Yeah, my opponent in round 2 was the same Parker Barrows player that Brian played round 1. He stuck with Parker Barrows, and I ended up taking Asami because I know how strong she is in Corrupted Idols. With her summons, they can't interact the turn they come in, but if you just plan ahead and you keep feeding guys that can take those wounds and keep pushing those markers, you pretty much have an engine to constantly be pushing these markers, whereas most people will run out of wounds eventually. We both ended up taking Deliver the Message, and what was it? He took Dig. I've played against Parker a lot, and I think Dig's kind of a trap with him. So he ended up not scoring full on that, and I ended up taking Outflank, and with the insane amount of minions I had, I was able to just control the board. It ended up being just kill, kill, kill the entire game. I think I ended up taking 6 or 7 points on that one, and he ended up with like 3.
Nice.
Because it was like Joragumu with Train Ninja, turn 1, pushing right into combat, like stupid stuff like that.
Yep. Parker's strong, so good for you. That's a big win. Brian mentioned it when the first time you come up against a run and gun crew. It's frustrating because they're so mobile and they're still attacking.
Yeah, and like I said, I have gotten a lot of playtime against Parker because one of my primary opponents has been testing him out, so that gave me a huge advantage in that game.
Yeah, and proves the point that we made a little bit earlier, right? That you have to face these masters to really get your arms around them. How about you, Brian? Who did you play second round?
I also took Asami into this round for pretty much the same reasons Josh brought up. It just seemed like having the extra sort of wound batteries of the summon models would be good for corrupted idols, and it was because that was the one round I won on the day. I was going up against a McCabe crew, so it was the terrible specter of 10 Thunders on 10 Thunders violence. I'm really enjoying Asami. I think she may be one of my mains in third edition. I like the fact that she has interesting ways to sustain the summon models. I had a 13 amass in my hand on the first turn, got a Joragumo out, and was able to keep him for the entire game just because of the way we have to remove those flicker counters. I also really liked having the Shadow Effigy in this mission because remember the mission is gold when you have to interact. But yeah, this was a close one. A lot of scrapping in the middle, but I managed to pull it out.
Good for you, man. Usually my only win comes in the last round of the tournament when I'm fighting for Spoon. All right. So last round, Josh, this is obviously where you ended up taking third, but can you tell us who you played and what you brought?
Yeah, I took Yanlo again. Like I said, I've been real comfortable with him lately, and I've kind of figured him out. It's like you said, once you kind of know their card, that's the guy you go with. And that's where I'm at with Yanlo.
Yeah, so for round 3, our strategy was turf war. I figured go something simple last round. And schemes, we had deliver a message again. Also saw assassinate again. Included hold up forces, jump, and harness delay line.
All right, and so you brought. And you didn't mention who you faced, Josh. What was the who did the opponent bring?
So I swear I'm not following right behind Brian the entire tournament, but I played his
Yeah, you might have. I don't know.
So I played his McCabe opponent round 3, and into turf war I ended up taking Yanlo mostly because I was comfortable with him, and I also know he's very tanky. And turf war ends up becoming really just like a mini reckoning. Like it's a lot about killing. But I gotta tell you, McCabe is fast. That guy gets around the board.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. That was my first time facing him, and I haven't got to play with him yet. I actually went and picked up the crew right after the tournament because I'm like, yeah, that's my team crew. But it was a really good match. Yanlo still ended up tanking pretty well, but McCabe, man, he gets around.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of McCabe in 3 because I think that not only is he strong, but I think that he's going to prove to be a very forgiving master because of his mobility. That I think for a lot of players that aren't great at the positioning aspect of the game yet, McCabe allows you to not get it right. And still get to where you need to go because not only is he fast, but the rest of his crew is too.
Yeah, the secret tunnels or whatever they are. Yeah, the whole crew is very quick.
Yep, no, very cool. And I assume you won?
It was a tight game, yeah. What was it, 6-5 in the end?
Wow.
Yeah, like most of my games of the day were tight.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing I like about 3. How about you, Brian? How did you finish out the day?
I brought Mei Feng because, again, I wanted to have a lot of the mobility. She's one that I've probably got the most games in with in 3rd edition. I'm still kind of fine-tuning what I've got with her, but I have a pretty good idea for where she stands. I really like the mobility. And I went up against a Seamus crew. And speaking of how annoying secret passages can be, that and the constant, you thought that was Seamus, but actually it's the copycat killer. It was a frustrating and an entertaining way. It was just like I couldn't get anybody pinned down. I think I wound up losing this one by 1 point. But very fun game. A lot of just all kinds of things teleporting around the board, trying to get stuff done. Just a really fun game. My main takeaway from this one is that I am going to keep taking a Tanuki in probably almost every crew. As versatile models go, they just seem really good. They've got great interact stuff. They got condition removal, healing. They just seem like a really handy utility piece, and they're cheap, and I can usually fit one in.
Very, very cool. Well, it sounds like it was a fun event, and it sounds like you accomplished some of your goals, which is to get models on the table. And I'll be very anxious to hear how some of those new players, whether that you attracted, not again playing in, but by watching the league happen. Before we finish out, though, I'd like to really kind of get some initial hot takes or top line thoughts from each of you on 3rd edition. So, Matt, can you start us off? If someone who was played 2 but hasn't played in 6 or 8 months, what do you think is kind of the big things they should know about 3rd edition?
Well, I think the big thing going into 3rd edition is if you played 2nd edition, don't expect to know what's going on. Obviously, we talked about earlier about picking up a master and sticking with them, and I think that is probably the most important thing. I jumped from Arcanist to Outcast for the beta, and I think I'm probably going to stick with them for 3rd edition for the time being. And it's been really handy just to pick one master, one crew, and just try to figure them out. And as I think you mentioned earlier, getting to that point where you don't really need to look at the cards, you understand what your triggers are, what suits you need, that sort of thing. I think that's really important moving in. As much as there's that sort of that need that wants to look at all the new models, or this master's changed or this crew's changed, I want to see what they're doing. Sure, go check that out, but bouncing around is not going to do you any favors in this new edition, because it's a lot of the mechanics are at least similar enough that it's not a completely new game, but it is a new game. And there's a lot to figure out, and you'll be doing yourself favors moving forward if you try to limit yourself. I know that's kind of a in vain statement, but try to limit yourself as far as at least what you're putting to the table initially, so you can figure everything out.
I agree. I completely agree. How about you, Josh?
It's kind of the same thing. Like, this game, every master, again, feels very broken, but you got to learn that master. Those matches where you go and play against somebody for the first time and you just get creamed, it's because they've been playing that master and they've figured it out. It's not as straightforward as it felt in M2E, where this master does this, all you have to do is do this. It's more about the crews. And with the themes, it's less about, hey, this is my go-to crew for every single master. It's more about, this is the crew I need to take in this pool. This is the master I need to take in this pool. So,
yeah, and that's a big part of what makes me excited about this edition. How about you, Brian? What are kind of your big thoughts on 3?
Well, I'm really excited about it in general. I am a big fan of the keyword system. I think for people who are new to the game or coming back in after a couple editions, that's really nice. It makes it a lot easier to do that kind of focus on one crew thing, because you can pretty much buy a box and maybe 1 or 2 additional models, and you've got kind of the core stuff that is guaranteed to work well together. The synergy within all the keywords is really strong and effective. Obviously there's going to be a big learning curve, not just for the crew you're playing, but the crew you're playing against. I had a game against Matt Carter a while back, and I made the mistake of playing a master for the first time against a crew that he had played a lot, and he also knew the master I was playing better than I did. So while he was very helpful in pointing out the things I did wrong after I did them, it was not a very successful game. But it's just, I'm so psyched about seeing this go forward. I really think the game is just tighter and cleaner, and in so many ways, and I think it's going to be a tremendous amount of fun.
So I've got to ask this, and I'm going to ask you guys to be honest. I don't know if you will be. Is Matt Carter any good at this game?
I've played several games against him, and obviously he helped design the game, and he remembers a lot. But you have to understand that he's worked with so many models and trying to remember all the rules that he makes mistakes. He actually misremembers certain things here or there too, because he's got all this up in his head. He's good at the game. I mean, I've beaten him a couple times. He's beaten me a couple times. Like right now, he's taking a stab at Hamlin, which I think gotten 2 games in with so far. It's been fun, and we played a game. We actually tried doing a 3-player game the other day, and that might have been one of the most fun games I think I've played since the beta started and all works. Just all the shenanigans that were going on, and you had 3 people just coming at each other, and you didn't know secret alliances were going on for a turn or two, and then you stab them in the back, kind of thing. I mean, it was so much fun.
Well, I think it helps that Matt's a super nice guy, he was a great guest on the show, and I was really enjoying my time with him. I would not expect him to be great at the game, and Brian, you're going to back me up on this. It's been my experience that the better you are at the game, the worse of a human being you are. So for guys like Brian and I who are just solid, good, nice guys, we're just doomed to be bad at the game.
I will say that our local tournament badass John Goldburn is also one of the nicest guys.
You're not helping me with this at all, Brian.
Well, no, and here's the thing, because the scale is not the same for Malifaux, because to put it in a family friendly way, Malifaux seems to have a much lower jerk quotient than a lot of other miniatures games. Even the sort of less nice players are still nice in most cases.
Yeah, it's really funny you say that, because when I left 40K and found the Malifaux scene here in the Raleigh area, that was one of the first things that I noticed was just like, it's just a nicer group of people. And I have heard that consistently across the board. And I don't know, do you guys have any guesses why that is? Because I don't.
I think part of it may be because it's a smaller game in terms of overall players, and also in financial commitment. I mean, you have people in, let's say, 40K, for an example, who have spent thousands and thousands of dollars on their armies and traveling around, and it's high visibility thing, and it gets very competitive. And I think even at the highest level of Malifaux, it's not that big a deal. You get some prizes and you get your name on a trophy, and that's cool. I just don't think it attracts the people who are hyper competitive in that way as much as something like a Warhammer 40K does.
I would agree with that statement as well. There's sort of a mentality of, I guess, with some other games, it's more of a pay to win, so to speak, where you get the biggest, baddest toys on the table, and you've got a much better chance of winning. Whereas this game, it boils so much down to, even what your strategy and your scheme pool is. Every game is different. So I just think people can go into it, not necessarily expecting to win. So I think that kind of takes some of the pressure off, and they just can go and have some fun with it.
I also think the aesthetic of the game, it's hard to take yourself too seriously when you're playing with like giant teddy bears.
That's true. Yep. No, that's very, very true. It's, I think it's a testament to the game. And I agree. You can't net list this game, and you definitely can't buy a trophy in this game. You have to earn it. It's what I love and hate about the game is I've got to get better if I plan on winning. I can't just start a podcast and start winning, or buy a bunch of bottles and start winning. So, gentlemen, I really appreciate you coming on. I think it was a good insight for the listeners out there. And again, if for those of you out there that are thinking about ways that you can help your meta, I think this Growth League tournament format is a good format. And Brian and Matt, do you mind if people reach out to you on Wyrd Place if they have any questions?
Yeah, that's fine by me. I'm on a Wyrd Place as Brian Schoner. I'm also on the Wyrd forums as One Little Thunder. And if you are in or around Georgia or thinking about visiting, please join the Georgia Malifaux Facebook group. We'd love to talk to you. That's
awesome.
Yeah, pretty much what Brian said. I'm on a Wyrd Place pretty often. Adding my little 2 cents here and there, and I'm Nomadic X Nightmare on the Wyrd forums. So, you can definitely send me a message if you have questions or anything along those lines, or just want to reach out.
I appreciate it. And Josh, obviously the same thing, right? They can just reach out to you on Facebook?
No, absolutely.
Great. And Brian, I'm going to give you the last 10 seconds. Why should I be listening to your podcast?
Because we have a person with an encyclopedic collection and knowledge of board games that is frankly terrifying, and then a bunch of other people who are just kind of normal nerds who make a lot of jokes and pick on each other.
All right, good. And like I said, guys, I'll have a link to Brian's podcast, and I'm not kidding when I tell you that it's a really good listen, especially if you like board games. And there's no other podcast that's quite like it. The format and kind of the approach, I think, is great. So guys, again, thanks. And I might try to catch up with you in a little bit after 3's been out to kind of check in.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. You're doing a great job with the show, and I appreciate you reaching out.
Oh, thanks, man. All right, guys, we'll catch you next time. Bye. Thanks for listening. Be sure to rate and write a review on this podcast so we can find more people almost as cool as you are. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube by searching for Third Floor Wars. That's THIRD. We'll catch you next time on the Third Floor.